This is Jocko Podcast number 98 with Echo Charles and me, Jocko Willink. Good evening, Echo.
Good evening.
They asked us to take off our headscarves and loosen any buttons to reveal our chests. That courtyard became the marketplace where ISIS men came and chose girls they liked, though they first sent all the older women to another place and the women with babies and other children to another place. We do not know the whereabouts of these women, and that includes my mother and my sisters. I had my period that night, but no matter how much I told him I have my period, he did not believe me. He ordered me to strip naked in his room. Then he stuck his finger in my vagina and saw that I was indeed bleeding. Only then did he believe. But that did not mean he left me alone. Instead, he put the air conditioner on a really high volume, said that I am to sit still in my nudity the whole night, and he molested me throughout the night. By the time morning arrived, I was frozen both physically and psychologically. Nothing mattered after that point. I didn't know I had not seen the worst of it yet. He would put on horrible sexual movies and would do all kinds of things to me. They all had long hair and long beards. But the worst of all is their smell. I've never smelled such awful smell in my life. They do not bathe. They feel more like beasts than human. Only Yazidi women are taken as slaves. Shia women, they burn alive. We saw one Shia woman burned alive in front of us. Christian women, they leave on the condition that their family must pay a fee for ISIS for being Christian in ISIS territories. And Sunni women are left alone as long as they follow ISIS orders. If they don't, they are whipped and tortured. Some of them are the wives of our captors. Some of the wives were as helpless as we were, and some were very mean women who encouraged their men to rape us. As long as a girl has some breast, she is considered a woman, and that entitles them to rape her. Some girls are as young as 10 and 11 years old. I have no past and no future at the moment. I am stuck in my anger and pain at what ISIS did to my family, my community, and myself. I have a new behavior that I can't stop, including washing my mouth over and over again. There are nights I wake up more than one time to wash my mouth as I remember what they did to me and how they forced themselves on me. I am a dead person now. I have no life. I only hope that my mother comes back from capture so my life can resume. So those are excerpts from an article that was in the New York Times by Zainab Salbi. And the quotes are from Layla, which is a pseudonym, who was a Yazidi woman captured by ISIS and obviously kept as a slave. And she eventually escaped and gave that interview in a camp in Erbil, which is in northern Iraq, which at the time was an Iraqi government-controlled city. And I would say this, if you think that evil does not exist in the world, you are wrong. It does. And it's not just individuals scattered around. These are groups of supposed human beings that are systematically implementing heinous and evil acts on totally innocent people. And I have obviously talked about evil before on this podcast. 20 years ago during the genocide in Rwanda. 50 years ago in Vietnam during the My Lai massacre. 75 years ago in Nazi Germany. 80 years ago in Nanking under the Imperial Japanese Army. And those things are in the past. But it is important to remember that evil is still happening now. And I know that it is hard for us to see that, especially here in America, in this unbelievably well-protected bubble that we live in. A bubble that is provided and protected by young and brave men and women who volunteer to go out and hold the line. But the evil is out there. It always is. And tonight, we have a guest on the podcast that I think has a very clear understanding of evil, of where it comes from, and how it manifests itself in the world. And he also has an incredible understanding of the good and what we as people can do to live our lives better for ourselves, for our families, for our communities, and for the world. His name is Dr. Jordan B. Peterson. You were talking about how not doing anything, when people are not going anywhere, when they're failing, when they don't have the drive, it's because they're not accepting responsibility for anything. And so my way of saying that is like, you need a new mission. You need to be responsible for something, and you need to go and move towards some new mission. And do you encounter people that, or you see people that's very problematic in the civilian side as well, where people, they just don't know what they're doing. They don't take responsibility for anything.
That's part of this nihilism, is that because, first of all, you learn that truth is relative, and that there's no real moral order. And, that alleviates you of responsibility. And that's why that's such an attractive message to people. But the problem is that it kills you. It kills your soul, so to speak, because, well, when we can talk about this technically. So, there are systems, neurological systems that underlie your experience of negative emotion, and there are neurological systems that underlie your experience of positive emotion, and they're separate systems. They obviously interact, but they're separate systems. So, but the positive emotion system, well, there's two of them, but one of them sort of kicks in when you get something that you want. So, you're hungry and you eat, and that feels good. And so that's kind of the simple one. But there's a more sophisticated one that I think is even more active in people. And it's the one that tells you that you're moving forward towards something worthwhile. And that's actually the one that gives people that sense of meaningful engagement in their life on a moment-to-moment basis. So, and it's also something that doesn't have to go away. Like if you're hungry and you eat, well, that's good, but it's over, and then you're on to the next thing, right? It's not exactly sustaining, it's just necessary. That's called consummatory reward, by the way. This other reward system is incentive reward. And the incentive reward system works on dopamine, this neurochemical dopamine, which is also the neurochemical tracks that opiates and cocaine and amphetamines, the drugs that people really like to abuse, alcohol often for some people, activate. And so you might say if you don't have enough meaning in your life, then you're more prone to addiction. And that's definitely the case. Even with rats, if you take a rat and you put him in a cage by himself and he has nothing to do, and then you give him access to cocaine, he'll get addicted to the point where he won't do anything but take cocaine. But if you throw the rat back in with a bunch of other rats and he gets to do rat things, then it's very hard to get him addicted to cocaine. And so the purposeless rat is prone to addiction. Well, it's the same with human beings. Now, here's a corollary to that, which is really cool. So the magnitude of the reward you experience as you're moving towards a goal is proportionate to the importance of the goal. So that means the more important the goal you pick, the more possibility there is for the kind of reward, let's say, it's really a state of being that is life-affirming. And it is directly life-affirming in that, like if you're in a football game and it's an important football game and maybe you break a finger. And, normally that's a problem. It hurts and you're going to stop doing whatever you're doing. But if you're right in the middle of the game, then you'll be so amped up on this reward system that it's analgesic. It stops the pain. It also suppresses anxiety. So if you have a purpose, then it's analgesic. It takes some of the pain out of life. It's very positive in that it motivates and energizes you and focuses you and makes you able to remember and pay attention. And it quells fear. And so those things are all direct. And so then you might think, well, what's the best possible goal? Well, and that's the purpose, I would say, of religious training and philosophical training. It's like, just what the hell are you doing in the world? And I would say, well, that's actually fairly easy to also lay out. And this is why nihilism is a much weaker philosophical position than it might appear to be. It's like, well, there are lots of terrible things happening in the world. If you're not, I don't care if you're a believer, an atheist, or a cynic of the highest sort. You listen to a story like the one that you read at the beginning of this podcast, and no one says, well, in 100,000 years, who the hell cares? So why does it matter? No one says that. They listen to that. Not if they're human. They listen to that story and they think, that's not good. It's like, that's right, that's not good. It's not good. You should do something about that. Because it's self-evidently not good. So you might say, well, at least you can start your self-organization by improving those things around you that are self-evidently not good. And that's easy, man. Anybody can do this. You can sit down for 10 minutes, say, well, I'm going to be honest with myself. Like, oh, that's a horrible thing to do. I'm going to be honest with myself. Okay, I'm probably doing a dozen stupid things that I could quit doing that are making my life more wretched, and also the people around me. And so you think, okay, what are those things? And if you really want to know, you have to want to know. And you're going to get a bunch of information that you don't want to hear, but you'll know it's true, and you already knew it in some sense. And then you can ask yourself, okay, that sucks, and it's miserable, and it's not very self-affirming. Is there one of those things I would be willing to do something about, that I would actually do something about, that I could do something about, that I would do something about, which is also another horrible question, because as soon as you get an answer to that, then you have a responsibility, right? It's like, oh God, I have to go do that. And it's something you don't want to do. You don't want to do it. That's why you've been avoiding it. And so then it's right in front of you. And it's like it's some little trivial, horrible thing that you're not going to get a pat on the back for, and no one's going to give you an award for it. And most people would just say, Jesus, you should have done that a long time ago, you moron. But then you go do it. That's kind of humility, I would say. And then you keep doing that. And it's like there's this injunction in the New Testament against praying in public. And it's like virtue signaling. It's like you don't pray in public because then you go out and you show everybody just what a great believer you are and how good you are. It's like, well, that's what you're doing. You're not trying to get your act together. That's something you do in private at home. You think, okay, what kind of moron am I? And what stupid things am I doing? And then what could I possibly do to get rid of one of those a little bit now? Well, anybody can do that. And that's associated with these great evils, in this way that we've already described. It's like you're improving your character, and you're constraining the kinds of actions and perceptions that you have that are going to make you sick of life and work against it. Because failure does that. That's the Cain story. It's like, keep screwing up, man. See what happens. If you think that isn't going to make you bitter, and if that isn't going to make you vengeful, and if that isn't going to make you work to hurt people around you, or at least not to help them, which is the same thing, then you're just not paying attention. Everyone knows that's true. So, well, that's responsibility, right? And then, so you take on this great task of putting yourself together. It gives you life meaning. And that also helps you be buttressed against the fact that there's lots of suffering in life and there's lots of malevolence. It's like, yeah, true, man. Absolutely. It's worse than you think even. But you can do more about it than you think. And there's nothing in it except good, but you also have to take responsibility. So that's the thing. You got to decide if that's what you're going to do. But you don't get to whine about it if you don't, because you haven't tested it.